Imagine sitting in a small diner late at night, sipping coffee, when suddenly masked men burst through the door with guns in their hands. Everyone panics, screams fill the room, but then, out of all people, a young waitress stays calm, steady, and fearless. What happened next not only saved lives that night, but also changed her future forever, because among the frightened customers sat a billionaire who was quietly watching her every move. His decision after that night shocked the entire world. This is a story you don't want to miss. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Kindness Tales, because here we share real and inspiring stories that can change the way you see the world. The night was quiet in the little corner diner, the kind of place that smelled of fresh coffee, warm bread, and a touch of fried food that clung to the walls. It wasn't a fancy place by any stretch, but it was the kind of diner people went to when they needed comfort. A slice of pie after a long day, or a cup of tea after a hard shift. Behind the counter worked a young waitress named Emily. She wasn't someone most people would notice right away. Her uniform was simple, her hair tied back neatly, and her smile was warm but not flashy. What people didn't know was that Emily had been through storms in her life far greater than anything the customers sitting at their tables could imagine. Tonight, however, fate was about to test her calmness in a way that would not only reveal her true strength but also change the path of her life forever. At one of the booths sat a man who looked like any other traveler. His clothes were plain, his presence quiet, and nobody seemed to pay him much attention. But this man was no ordinary customer. He was Alexander Reed, a billionaire who had built his empire from the ground up, a man whose face was often on magazine covers and financial news networks, though he preferred to live without drawing attention. He had slipped into the diner that night looking for a few moments of normalcy, a chance to be among everyday people, to remember what simplicity felt like. He never imagined that what he would witness in that little diner would inspire him to make a decision so profound that the entire world would soon be talking about it. It started suddenly. The bell on the door jingled, and in came two men wearing dark hoodies and masks. Their movements were quick, aggressive, filled with the kind of energy that made everyone freeze instantly. One of them pulled out a gun and pointed it toward the counter, shouting for everyone to get down, while the other barked orders for wallets, purses, and phones. The sound of chairs scraping against the floor echoed as frightened customers ducked under tables, trembling, whispering prayers, or trying not to breathe too loudly. Alexander, though no stranger to danger in the business world, felt his chest tighten with fear. Money and power meant nothing when staring down the barrel of a gun. Yet in the midst of all this chaos, one person didn't panic, Emily. She looked straight at the men, her face steady, her voice calm as she gently placed the coffee pot back onto its tray. "Take what you need," she said softly, her tone carrying no challenge, no fear, just a quiet steadiness that cut through the tension like a warm knife through butter. Her hands did not shake, her eyes did not dart around the room wildly like the others. She was the picture of composure, and everyone around her could feel it. One of the robbers snarled, waving the gun at her, clearly irritated by her calmness. "Don't play smart. Empty the register," he barked. Emily nodded slowly, moving with deliberate care. She didn't rush, she didn't flinch, her every movement was steady, almost soothing, as though she were guiding everyone in the room silently to breathe, to stay still, to trust that the storm would pass. As she opened the register and handed the bills to the robber, she spoke again, her voice steady. "Please don't hurt anyone. Just take the money. That's all you need, right?" For a moment, the robber hesitated. There was something disarming about her tone, as if she had seen men like him before and knew exactly how to stop the fire from spreading. Alexander watched in awe, his eyes fixed on this young woman who was demonstrating more bravery in that moment than he had ever seen in boardrooms filled with powerful executives. He wondered, how could she be so calm when everyone else was collapsing under fear? Minutes felt like hours, but the robbery passed quicker than anyone expected. The men grabbed what they could and ran out the door, leaving the bell jingling behind them, the echo of chaos slowly fading into the night. The customers began to breathe again, tears and relief filling the air. Some hugged each other, some prayed out loud, and some simply sat in shock. But Emily? She went right back to making sure everyone was safe. She offered water to an elderly couple still shaking, she knelt down to comfort a child who had been crying quietly under the table, and she smiled gently at a young mother who couldn't stop trembling. She even called the police with a steady voice, giving them clear details of what had happened, her words precise and focused. It was as though she had been trained for a moment like this, though she had never once worn a badge or held a weapon. Alexander couldn't take his eyes off her. He had seen courage in many forms, soldiers protecting their countries, entrepreneurs risking everything to build their dreams, leaders standing firm in the face of opposition, but there was something unique about the kind of courage Emily displayed. It was kindness in the middle of chaos, strength without violence, calmness without arrogance. It was the kind of courage that could change lives, not through power, but through peace. And in that moment, Alexander made a silent decision. He wouldn't just finish his coffee and leave like any other customer. He needed to know who this woman was, what her story was, and why she had such extraordinary strength hidden in such an ordinary life. When the police finally arrived and the scene settled, Emily quietly slipped back behind the counter, wiping it down as though nothing extraordinary had happened. She smiled gently at Alexander as she refilled his cup, her hands as steady as ever. "Sorry about the interruption," she said softly, almost as though it had been nothing more than a rainstorm passing over the diner. Alexander chuckled lightly, shaking his head. You were remarkable," he whispered. She shrugged modestly, her eyes showing the kind of humility that comes only from people who do good not to be noticed, but simply because it's who they are. Little did Emily know that the man sitting at her booth was not just another diner customer. And little did she know that her calmness, her quiet strength, and her steady courage in the face of danger had just set into motion a chain of events that would soon put her story on the lips of millions around the world. Because Alexander Reed, the billionaire nobody noticed that night, was already planning his next move, and it was one that would shock the entire world. The next morning, Emily's life changed forever. As she walked into the diner, she was stunned to see reporters, cameras, and flashing lights waiting outside. Confused, she pushed her way through only to find Alexander Reed standing at the counter, no longer hiding who he was. He announced to the world that he had witnessed true bravery in a young waitress who had faced danger with kindness and calmness. Right there, in front of everyone, he offered Emily a scholarship, a fund to support her dreams, and pledged to build a foundation in her name to help ordinary heroes who change lives through compassion. Tears welled in Emily's eyes as the room erupted in applause. What began as a terrifying night had turned into a story of hope, courage, and kindness that touched millions around the world. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Kindness Tales for more inspiring stories.